Okay, so get this, President-elect Trump. Well, he just nominated Matt Gaetz for Attorney General. And you know what? Everyone is losing their minds over it. So we're going to be taking a look at this Politico article today. They really break down, like, all the fallout from this decision. And I got to say, it's pretty wild.
Oh, yeah. The reactions have been intense. I mean, and not just from the Democrats, right? You'd expect them to push back. But some Republicans are even saying that this nomination is basically DOA. Like, Representative Max Miller, he said it has, like, 0% chance of being confirmed. And then you have Senator Murkowski just straight up calling it not a serious nomination.
Wow. Yeah, those are some pretty strong words. And it's not like they're just trying to be polite either. They seem genuinely concerned about it. Like Gaetz's history and what he stands for. A lot of Republicans have disagreed with him on everything from criminal justice reform to environmental regulations.
Right. And it's also important to remember that Gaetz was like a key player in getting McCarthy kicked out as Speaker. I mean, that really split the Republican Party. And now, with this nomination, it feels like all that resentment is bubbling up again. You know, all those ideological differences within the GOP are on full display. Like Senator Tillis even said, he's getting ready for a popcorn-eating confirmation hearing, which kind of tells you everything you need to know. It's going to be messy.
Oh, yeah, and we can't forget about, the whole elephant in the room here. I mean, Gaetz's past is... well, it's definitely controversial, to say the least. Even though he wasn't charged by the DOJ, you can't ignore the fact that he's investigated. And there's still that ethics committee investigation hanging over him, which just adds another layer of complexity to this whole situation.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the ethics committee investigation is totally separate from the DOJ. It happens within the House of Representatives, and they look at whether a member violated any rules or, like, standards of conduct. And the fact that it's still ongoing, well, it raises some serious questions about Gaetz's judgment. Does he really meet the ethical standards? For someone who's supposed to be the nation's top legal officer, I mean, you can bet that the Democrats are going to bring this up during the confirmation process.
Oh, for sure. Okay, so let's look at the math here for a second. Republicans have a 53-seat majority in the Senate, right? But you got to figure the Democrats are going to vote against Gaetz. Probably unanimously, right? So that means Republicans can only afford to lose like 3 votes. Given how much pushback there is already, is there even a remote chance he gets enough votes?
It's going to be tough. I mean, Senators Collins and Murkowski have already come out and said they have reservations. And a bunch of others are just staying quiet or saying they're concerned. As the article pointed out, even a little bit of doubt can easily turn into a no vote, especially in a situation like this, where things are so politically charged.
So why would Trump even do this then? He's known for shaking things up. But with Gaetz likely to be blocked, what's the strategy here?
Yeah, that's the big question everyone in Washington is trying to figure out.
Yeah.
One theory that's been floating around, and the article mentions this too, is that Trump might be doing this on purpose. Like, he knows Gaetz won't get confirmed, but it gives him cover to then appoint someone else, someone who might be more acceptable to the Senate.
Oh, so like he puts Gaetz out there as if it's like the sacrificial lamb or something, takes all the heat, and then Trump gets to swoop in with his backup choice.
Exactly. It's definitely a move straight out of Trump's playbook.
It's kind of brilliant when you think about it.
Well, I don't know about brilliant, but it's definitely strategic. And it raises some other interesting questions too, like who could that backup be? And would they actually be someone who aligns with Trump's views? Just, maybe someone a little less polarizing.
Yeah, and what does this whole strategy say about Trump? I mean, is he willing to basically ignore all the norms just to get what he wants?
It's certainly a possibility.
It's kind of scary when you think about it.
Yeah, it's definitely something to keep an eye on.
Okay, so before we get too deep into the hypothetical here,
yeah,
let's talk about Gaetz's actual views on the DOJ and the FBI, because those are pretty concerning on their own.
Right, he's been very critical of both, which, aligns with Trump's own distrust of what he calls the deep state. Gaetz has even talked about defunding or abolishing the FBI entirely.
Wow.
Which raises some big questions about, if he's actually capable of leading an agency he seems to hate.
It's like a giant conflict of interest waiting to happen.
Pretty.
Has there ever been an attorney general who's been so openly hostile toward the agencies they're supposed to oversee?
I mean, not in recent history.
And the potential consequences are kind of terrifying.
Right. I mean, think about it. The attorney general has a lot of power. They can influence investigations, decide what crimes to focus on, and even interpret the law in ways that can really impact people's lives.
So if someone like Gaetz,
yes,
who's made it clear he doesn't trust the DOJ or the FBI, if he gets that kind of power, it could really damage those institutions.
Definitely. people might stop trusting them. And that could make it hard for them to do their jobs effectively.
It's already raising concerns about the DOJ being used for political purposes. Like, people are worried that Gaetz might try to shield Trump and his allies from investigations, or that he'll use his power to target political opponents.
Those are legitimate concerns, based on what Gaetz has said and done in the past.
And let's not forget about the impact this could have on the people who actually work in federal law enforcement.
Right. They're already under so much scrutiny. Imagine how demoralizing it would be to have a boss who doesn't even believe in their mission.
Yeah, it's a recipe for disaster. We're facing one of the most contentious confirmation battles in a long time. And the stakes are incredibly high. This isn't just about Gaetz. It's about the future of the Justice Department. It's about the rule of law. And ultimately, it's about the health of our democracy.
I completely agree. This situation has exposed some fundamental vulnerabilities in our system of government, and it's up to all of us to pay attention and demand better.
Well said. This deep dive has been a real eye-opener. It's made me realize just how fragile our institutions are and how important it is to fight for them.
Absolutely. We can't take our democracy for granted.
It's time to roll up our sleeves and get to work.
I'm with you.
All right, so we're going to take a quick break. But when we come back, we'll be discussing what this nomination means for the Republican Party and what it tells us about the state of American politics today. Stay with us. Okay, so we've talked a lot about Gaetz and Trump, but what about the other Republicans? They're kind of caught in the middle of all this, right?
Oh, totally. It's like they're in a pressure cooker. This isn't just a vote for them. It's a loyalty test. They have to figure out where they stand. Do they side with Trump? Or do they go with their conscience? Or what their constituents want? It's a tough spot to be in.
Yeah, and then you have the whole future of the party to think about, too.
Exactly. Like Senator Tillis, he said he's expecting a popcorn-eating confirmation hearing, which kind of tells you everything you need to know, right?
It's going to be a spectacle.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be must-see TV with Republicans stuck right in the middle of it.
It's fascinating to see how different Republicans are reacting. Like Senator Rubio, he's been nominated for Secretary of State.
Yeah.
And he came out strong in support of Gaetz.
Right, but then you have others like Cornyn and Johnson. They're being way more cautious, like wait and see kind of approach.
Yeah, they're trying to stay out of line of fire.
Definitely. I mean, Rubio's stance is interesting because as a potential cabinet member, supporting Gaetz could be seen as a way to, solidify his position with Trump, show some loyalty.
Makes sense.
But it also puts him at odds with the Republicans who see Gaetz as a liability for the party. So it could create some friction within the administration even before it gets started.
Yeah, it's like he's playing a risky game.
Definitely a gamble.
And then you have the ones who are hesitant.
Like Cornyn and Johnson, they're probably just trying to figure out which way the wind is blowing, assess the situation, see what the fallout might be.
Whether they support Gaetz or not.
Exactly.
It's like their silence speaks volumes.
Right.
They know this vote could come back to haunt them.
Absolutely.
It makes you realize just how much influence Trump still has.
Yeah, even after losing the election, his endorsement still carries a lot of weight. A lot of Republicans are afraid to go against him.
Because they don't want to alienate his base.
Right, and they don't want to risk their own careers.
It makes sense. So with all that in mind, the divided GOP, the potential for political maneuvering, and all the opposition to Gaetz, do you think he actually has a chance of being confirmed?
Honestly, I don't think so. The numbers just aren't there. Even if a few Republicans vote for him, I don't see how he gets to 51 votes.
Interesting.
It seems pretty unlikely.
So let's play devil's advocate for a second. What if this whole nomination is a distraction? Like a way for Trump to divert attention from something else?
That's an interesting thought.
While simultaneously pushing his own agenda.
It's not impossible. I mean, Trump is great at manipulating the media, controlling the narrative.
It wouldn't be the first time he's done something like that.
Right. So maybe this is all just a way to dominate the headlines, create some controversy.
Take the focus away from other things that might not be so favorable to him. Like a magician's sleight of hand. Everyone's watching Gaetz, while something else is happening behind the scenes.
Maybe he's setting the stage for a different nomination later on. Or maybe he's trying to push through some legislation while everyone's distracted.
Yeah, it's a clever move if that's what he's doing.
It would be very strategic.
But if it is all part of some bigger plan, who benefits from it? Is there someone else waiting in the wings, someone who is more aligned with Trump's vision for the DOJ? but without all the baggage that Gaetz brings.
That's the million-dollar question. The article doesn't mention any names specifically, but it does hint that Trump might have a plan B.
Someone who could get confirmed more easily.
Someone who could appease both his base and enough senators.
It paints a pretty cynical picture of politics, doesn't it?
It does make you wonder about the state of our democracy.
Like, are these important positions just bargaining chips in some power game?
It's a valid concern.
It's unsettling to think about.
I agree.
It makes you question whether our leaders are really looking out for the best interests of the people.
We need to demand more from our elected officials. We need transparency and integrity.
This whole situation with Gaetz' nomination, it's really highlighted some of the problems with our system.
It shows how power struggles and backroom deals can really influence things.
And it makes you wonder what other things are happening that we don't know about.
Transparency is crucial.
Absolutely. But it's also a reminder that we, the people, still have power.
We have the right to demand better.
We can scrutinize our leaders, hold them accountable.
We can't just be passive observers.
We need to be active participants in our democracy.
I completely agree.
This deep dive has been a lot to process.
Yeah, it's been a whirlwind.
But it's been really insightful. It's shown us the complexities of the political landscape.
And the challenges we face as a nation.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed by everything that's happening.
Right. It's easy to tune it all out.
But we can't afford to do that.
We need to stay informed, engage in thoughtful discussions.
And most importantly, make our voices heard.
Our democracy depends on it.
I think that's a great place to leave it for now. We've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
But there's still so much more to unpack. We need to talk about the potential impact of Gaetz' nomination on the actual work of the DOJ.
Yeah, and what it means for the rule of law in this country.
So stay tuned for part 3 of our deep dive, where we'll be exploring those issues in more detail.
I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. So we've been talking about all the political drama surrounding this Matt Gaetz nomination. But beyond all that, there's a bigger question here. One that really matters to everyone.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in all the speculation, the political maneuvering, but at the end of the day, we're talking about the Department of Justice, an institution that impacts every single American.
Right. It's not just some abstract political game. The Attorney General is like the head honcho of the entire legal system. Their decisions have real-world consequences for all of us.
Absolutely.
This isn't just politics as usual.
Right. The Attorney General is not just another political appointment. They make decisions that can shape the legal landscape for years to come.
For decades, even.
Exactly. They have the power to launch or shut down investigations. They decide what types of crimes to focus on, and they interpret the law in ways that can have a huge impact on individuals and communities.
It's a lot of power.
It is.
And think about what it could mean for things like voting rights, environmental protection, even the investigations into Trump himself. A Justice Department led by Gaetz would probably have a very different approach to those issues.
Oh, definitely. Than someone with different priorities.
And it's not just about specific policies either.
Right. It's also about the overall tone, the message it sends.
Imagine if you're a whistleblower or you're trying to expose corruption and you see that the Justice Department is more interested in protecting powerful people
than in actually pursuing justice.
It would be pretty discouraging.
It would have a chilling effect, for sure.
And what about the people who work at the DOJ? The career lawyers and investigators, the ones who are committed to upholding the law.
Right. The ones who aren't playing political games.
How do you think they would feel? Having a boss who's openly hostile to the institutions they're supposed to lead.
I mean, it can't be good for morale.
It would make it really hard to do their jobs effectively.
They might be afraid to pursue certain investigations if they thought it would upset the Attorney General.
It could really undermine the whole system.
Definitely.
This whole situation really shows how important it is to have an Attorney General who's independent.
And impartial.
Someone who's committed to the rule of law.
Someone who sees themselves as a servant of the Constitution.
Not a political tool.
Exactly.
The Attorney General is supposed to be the people's lawyer.
It's not the president's lawyer.
They have a duty to uphold the law fairly.
For everyone.
So where does that leave us? We've talked about the political maneuvering, the potential consequences for the DOJ. What's the takeaway here?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is we can't just sit back and watch this happen. We need to pay attention to these appointments, understand what's at stake, and hold our elected officials accountable.
We can't just assume that everything will work out in the end.
Right. We need to be active participants in our democracy.
We need to stay informed.
Have conversations about these issues.
Contact our senators.
Support organizations that are fighting for judicial independence.
Whatever we can do to make our voices heard.
Because our system relies on people being engaged.
This deep dive has been a real whirlwind.
It has.
But it's been so important.
It's exposed some of the dark underbelly of our political system.
It's shown us how Tower works and how decisions made in Washington can have a real impact on our lives.
Exactly.
It can feel overwhelming sometimes, but it's crucial that we stay informed.
And that we keep asking questions.
That's what this deep dive is all about. Thanks for joining us.
It's been a pleasure.
And until next time, stay curious and stay engaged.
Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe.